Hello, good morning everyone. My name is Abhay Singh and I welcome you all in today's video analysis of The Hindu. Today is 7th of August 2024 and we'll start with the first news headline for the day. And the first major news headline is coming all the way from Bangladesh where there has been a shift in the government. So the longest serving Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, has been overthrown. Now, Bangladesh President Mohammad Shahabuddin on Tuesday dissolved the 12th parliament formed through the January 7 national election and assured that country that fresh elections will be held as soon as possible. This comes a day after Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina stepped down after 15 straight years in power and fled the country following a crackdown on widespread protests. So, when Bangladesh government last month, Bangladesh government has announced a 30% quota for the 1971 war veterans. 1971 में जो वॉर हुआ था, बांग्लादेश लिबरेशन वॉर हुआ था, उसमें जिन लोगों ने कंट्रीब्यूट किया था उनके बेटों या बेटियों को 30% का रिजर्वेशन देने की बात की थी बांग्लादेश गवर्नमेंट ने। उसके बाद पैन बांग्लादेश पूरा प्रोटेस्ट स्टार्ट हो गया था, पूरे बांग्लादेश में प्रोटेस्ट हो रहे थे और उसमें क्लोज टू 200 या 250 लोगों की जान चली गई थी। 200 टू 250 पीपल हैव लॉस्ट देयर लाइफ इन दोज प्रोटेस्ट। उसके बाद से एक एंटी इनकम्बेंसी स्टैब्लिश हो गई शेख हसीना के बाद और वो फिर रुकी ही नहीं। उसके बाद बांग्लादेश सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने जो 30% का कोटा था उसे क्वाश करके 5% कर दिया और उसके बाद कुछ टाइम तक प्रोटेस्ट शांत हुए। बट अगेन दिस वाज द सेकेंड वेव ऑफ प्रोटेस्ट और ये सेकेंड वेव थोड़ा ज़्यादा डेंजरस थी। अवामी लीग की लीडर थी शेख हसीना, इन्हें रिजाइन करना पड़ा। 45 मिनट्स का टाइम दिया था वहाँ की मिलिट्री ने कि आप 45 मिनट्स हैं आपके पास, आप देश छोड़ के जा सकती हैं। सो वो देश छोड़ के कहाँ आई? वो इंडिया आई और वो हिंडन एयरबेस पर लैंड की थी। Now, the situation is very tough. Is that Bangladesh will have a fresh elections. Now, the another news that is coming all the way from Paris that our wrestler Vinesh Fogart has reached the finals of 50 kg freestyle, and she has defeated Guzman Lopez. Guzman Lopez in the semi-finals to reach the finals of the 50 kg freestyle wrestling. Now, moving on to the next important news headline for the day. So basically, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman had announced that the tax on long-term capital gains is being reduced from 20% with indexation benefits to 12.5% without indexation benefits. So basically, if you want to take the indexation benefits, then you have to pay a tax of 12.5%, and if you do not want to take the benefits, if you want to take the benefits of indexation, then then you have to pay that the tax on long term capital is being reduced from 20% with indexation. So अगर आप indexation के साथ में tax pay करेंगे तो 20% है, अगर without indexation आप tax pay करना चाहते हैं तो it's 12.5%. Now what is indexation? Suppose the value, the price of a commodity in the month of January 2005 was 5 rupees. Now in 2025 the price of the same commodity is 70. So you will have a real time gain of 75 rupees, 65 rupees. सपोज आपने कोई चीज 2005 में खरीदी 10 रुपए की, अभी आपने उसको 75 रुपए में बेचा, आपको रियल टाइम गेन कितना हुआ? 65 रुपीज का। बट इन मीन वाइल पैसे की भी वैल्यू में तो थोड़ा बहुत अप्रिसिएशन हुआ होगा ना। तो वो जो पैसे की वैल्यू में अप्रिसिएशन हुआ उसको जब हम एडजस्ट करेंगे तो जो आपका वो 65 रुपीज का प्रॉफिट था, रियल टाइम प्रॉफिट था, वो आपका 40 हो जाएगा। क्यों? क्योंकि जो पैसे की वैल्यू की वजह से भी तो प्रॉफिट में असर पड़ेगा ना। तो ये होता है आपका इंडेक्सेशन। अगर आप इंडेक्सेशन के साथ कैपिटल गेन्स वो करना चाहते हैं तो आपको 20% टैक्स देना पड़ेगा। अगर आप विदाउट इंडेक्सेशन देना चाहते हैं तो आपको 12.5% टैक्स देना पड़ेगा। नाउ कमला हैरिस हैज सेलेक्टेड वॉल्स एज वाइस प्रेसिडेंट नॉमिनी। Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris selected Minnesota Governor Tim Walz to her running mate on Tuesday. So basically, Tim Walz is going to be the running mate of Kamala Harris. Now, what is the meaning of this running mate? Running mate means nothing but the vice president. So basically, he is going to be the vice president for Kamala Harris. Now, moving on to the next important news headline for the day. So after this protest in Bangladesh, all the states of India who shares or which shares borders with Bangladesh, they have basically tightened the security at the borders. Four northeastern states bordering Bangladesh have stepped up vigilance along the border with Bangladesh to check possible unauthorized entry of people fleeing the political turmoil there. While Meghalaya has slammed night curfew along its 443-kilometer border with Bangladesh, Assam, Mizoram, and Tripura have asked the border security force, the Assam Rifles, the local police, and other security agencies to keep up a sharp eye on cross-border movement. So there are five states in India which shares border with Bangladesh. Now, what are these five states? Meghalaya, Assam, Tripura, and Mizoram. West Bengal, Meghalaya, Assam, Mizoram, and Tripura are the five Indian states which share border with Bangladesh. Now, all the five states have beefed up the security. All these five states have beefed up the security so that the illegal immigrants, or there are so many candidates, there are so many people who are fleeing Bangladesh because after the unrest there. So we have to beef up the security. So these five states have asked the local police, Assam Rifles and Border Security Police to tighten the security at the border so that illegal people from Bangladesh cannot enter India illegally. Now Bangladesh and India shares the longest border. Bangladesh shares the longest border with India. It has a 4,000. It shares a border of 4,996 kilometer. 4,096 kilometer of border, and out of this 4,096 kilometer border, 2,217 kilometer border falls in West Bengal. The Assam, Mizoram, and Tripura stretches of the border are 262 kilometer, 318 kilometer, and 856 kilometer respectively. So basically, these are the various states in India which shares border with Bangladesh. The government of these respective states have asked the police and as well as central agencies to beef up the security so that illegal migrants or not the people from Bangladesh cannot enter India illegally. Now moving on. Now center has issued norms for organ transport in India. Now Central Health Ministry or Union Health Ministry has issued set of guidelines for the transportation of live human organs. So there are only two ways for this organ transplantation. One, you take the organ from a living donor, and another one is basically you take the organ from a brain dead person. So now central government, our Union Health Ministry, which is headed by JP Nadda, has issued some guidelines. In a first, the Union Ministry of Health and Family Welfare has issued a set of guidelines for the transportation of live human organs. So these guidelines have been issued for the transportation of live human organs. The transport protocols aim to ensure that expeditious movement of life-saving organs from the point of harvest to their destination through effective use of available infrastructure. Now, these guidelines have been issued so that organs can be transported from the source. From the source, not exactly, the word should not be the source, but actually from where these organs are taken to the place where these organs will be transplanted. So now the Central Union Health Ministry has provided a specific guidelines related to the transportation of organs. The Transplantation of Human Organs and Tissues Act. This is basically this is known as THOTA Act. THOTA Act. Transplantation of Human Organs and Tissues Act 1994 allows harvesting of organs from living donors or brain dead patients with the consent of family members. So basically, 1994, this THOTA Act 1994 uh, allows harvesting of organs from living donors or brain dead person if their family member gives consent. So in case of a dead person, the consent of the family member is required. So basically, these guidelines have been these guidelines have been issued by the Union Health Ministry, which is headed by Jagat Prakash Nadda or JP Nadda. Now coming on to the editorial part, only one article is important for the day. And now this particular article is basically focusing on only one thing, one aspect of our economy, and that how India can achieve a target of $30 trillion by 2047. Now during the Amrit Kal, it was promised by Bharatiya Janata Party that during the Amrit Kal is a period of 2022 to 2047. During this particular period, India will become a developed nation and we will achieve the total economy of $30 trillion. Commentary on the Indian growth story often betrays a hint of premature triumphalism. Facts such as our 7% plus GDP growth rate and India being a fast growing large economy in the world today are repeated to buttress prophecies such as the 21st century being India's century. Now, this particular article is trying to say that everybody is saying that 21st century is India's century, and to justify this particular statement, various kind of buttering statements are or various kind of buttering prophecies are made by the government. so that we can prove that 21st century is India's century. For India to avoid such a fate and become a 30 trillion economy by 2047. Now we are not the only country who are, developing like this for the first time. There are so many countries in the world which have similar situations like India had right now, which had situations like India have right now. There is a belief in that in India's case, economic growth is inevitable. We must remember that several countries have been here before at the very juncture where India stands today. So we have already discussed it that so many other countries in the world had already faced the same. They were already in the same situation which we are in, which India is in, which India stands today. But again, we have to incentivize it. We have to incentivize our situation. We have to incentivize our demographic demographic equations. If we don't incentivize our demographic equation, then there is no need of having then there is no need to call 21st century as India's century. Now we have to learn from various other economies which were like India, but they were not able to incentivize because of various situations. From independence till 1991, India's poverty rate stayed at approximately 50% despite socialist policies emphasizing poverty reduction. So before 1991, there was not much of reduction in poverty in India. Approximately 50% of Indians were living in abject poverty. But post 1991, when the liberalization, privatization, and globalization policies was issued, Mr. Manmohan Singh was the main you know this particular policy, this LPG policy, liberalization, privatization, and globalization. This particular policy is a brainchild of Mr. Manmohan Singh. Now, till 1991, India's to 50% of Indians were living in the abject poverty, but post 1991, this rate has come down. This rate has come down. Between the year of liberalization and 2011, between 1991 and 2011, in the 20 years, the poverty rate fall to approximately 20%. So from 50%, the India's poverty rate was at 50% till 1991, but between 1991 and 2011, this poverty rate has come down to 20%. India's growth pulled 35 crore people out of abject poverty during this period. So during this 20 years period, 35 crore people have been brought out of the abject poverty. Is India more equal today than pre 1991? Now, but let's move on to the next paragraph. The easier gains from the economic reforms of the 1990s have been realized. India's high growth year of 2000 to 2010 were led by an IT services boom that spawned an affluent middle class. However, 46% of our labor force remains in agriculture, characterized by low productivity and underemployment, contributing just 18% of our GDP. Now, this particular author has given one more important observation that between the 2000 to 2010, this economic growth was backed by the IT services boom. Because of the boom in the IT services, we have seen the immense growth in between 2000 to 2010. But our majority of our working population is engaged in agriculture. 46% of our labor force remains in agriculture, and the sad fact is that 46% of laborers, or the say 46% of India's workforce is contributing just 18% in our GDP. So this is one data that we have to keep in our mind. Even this is a figure that masks more than it reveals, as it was 26% in 2019, and post COVID-19, several more women have gone back to work as agricultural labor. Compare this with female labor force participation ratio in China, Vietnam, and Japan, all between 60 to 70%, and we know exactly where we need to be. So basically, in India, the female labor force participation rate is 26% in 2019, and it has shoot up or it has gone up post COVID-19. At currently at India's female labor force participation rate is 32.8%. Now let's look at some other Asian countries. What is their status? So now there are various Asian countries like China, Vietnam, and Japan, which are basically the manufacturing hub of the world. These countries have a participation ratio of female labor force participation rate of 60 to 70%, and India 32.8%. So this is the first loophole that we have to identify, that we have to provide more employment, more opportunities to the women in general. Because if we don't provide enough opportunities to women in general, then we don't have much of the participation from the other sectors as well. Because आफ्टर अ पॉइंट जो मेल है वो क्या हो जाएंगे, सेचुरेट कर जाएंगे, फिर आप उससे ज्यादा मेल्स को और रिक्रूट ही नहीं कर पाएंगे. फिर आपको क्या करना होगा, एट द एंड ऑफ द डे यू हैव टू गिव एम्प्लॉयमेंट टू द वेमेन. आप जितना जल्दी देंगे आपकी इकोनॉमी के लिए उतना बेटर होगा. सो दिस पर्टिकुलर ऑथर इज ट्राइंग टू गिव दिस पर्टिकुलर स्टेटमेंट that in India the female labor force participation rate before COVID was 26%, and post COVID it is 32%. Now, other Asian countries like Japan, Vietnam, and China have female labor force participation rate of 60 to 70%. So we have to bridge this particular gap from 32.8% to we have to take it to 60 to 70%. Now, as it was for India. Between 1919 and 2013, export as a percentage of India's GDP grew from 7% in 1990 to 25% in 2013. So basically, the contribution of our export in our GDP was 7% in 1990, which has grew up three times to 3.8, 3.4 3.4 times to 25% in 2030. So basically, the contribution of export in our GDP has increased significantly from 7% to 25%. Today, as India tries to capitalize on the China Plus One movement to attract global manufacturers and their supply chains and further augment its export, we must resist the temptation of putting up huge tariffs wall for the import. Now we have to understand that if we want to establish ourselves as a export, as a manufacturing hub for the world, then we have to develop skills in Indians. Indians do not have enough skills. Indians do not have skills of international standards. So if you want to develop, if we want to bring more and more companies in India, if we want to set up India as a manufacturing hub for the world, then we have to develop certain kind of soft skills in Indians. Now, without developing those soft skills, it will become very tough for multinational companies to survive in India because they need a certain kind of international standards in their employees. We have to develop those standards in our employees. Of 101 middle economies in 1960, only 23 had attained a high income status by 2018. Now, this is one data that in 1960 there were 101 middle income economies in the world, and in last 58 years, out of this 101 middle economies, only 23 had attained a high income status, which means 20.3%. 23%, close to 23% countries were able to achieve this high income status. Now, this is one problem. The conversion rate is very poor. The conversion rate is of 20%. We, as of now, are a middle income economy. If you want to become a high income nation by 2047, that is the Amrit Kal, the Indian economy will grow 10 times from $3 trillion to $30 trillion. Currently, India's economy stands at 4.768 trillion dollar. So, if we want to grow our economy 7.5 times in next 20 to 25 years, then we have to take certain strong steps. We have to make our economy more service centric. We have to see that the participation of workers in agriculture sector is 46%, but agriculture sector is contributing only 18% to our GDP. So these are the various problems that we have to identify. And now let's look at this particular, look at this last paragraph, then we'll move on to the next page. India's problem is peculiar. We have been unable to leverage out surplus labor to grow in low end sectors. So basically हम लोगों leverage नहीं ले पाए, हम लोग इस चीज़ को incentivize नहीं कर पाए कि जो लो एंड सेक्टर्स में जो सरप्लस लेबर है उसको हम लोग इंसेंटिवाइज नहीं कर पाए अच्छे से. इंडिया सोशल सेक्टर एंड सिविल सोसाइटी शुड बी व्यू campaigns that pay paint factories and sweatshops decrying their work conditions and low wages in this regard. Avoiding the middle income trap requires a market-led economy that lets private enterprises thrive without the government or perception of factory jobs getting in the way, minimum government, maximum governance. So basically, what this particular author is suggesting that we have to approach a more liberal approach. We have to adopt a more liberal approach. We have to give free hands to the companies. So the intervention of government should be very minimum. The government must also double down on its impressive achievements in revamping India's hitherto creaky infrastructure by building industrial clusters that are on a par with those in China and Vietnam. So basically, what this author is suggesting that if you want to achieve this $30 trillion status by 2047, then we have to build certain industrial cluster. Now, what is this industrial cluster? That you have to develop certain places in India where those places will be specifically for the industries and factories. So we have to develop those clusters in various cities and various states of India so that we can attract more and more foreign companies. Now, moving on to the next important article, and next important article is basically related to this UP's stringent anti-conversion law. Now, the Uttar Pradesh government has brought one amendment in the 2000 in the act which was originally passed in 2021. The Uttar Pradesh Legislative Assembly on July 30th passed the Uttar Pradesh Prohibition of Unlawful Conversion of Religion Bill 2024, altering the original 2021 anti-conversion law by making its provisions more draconian and susceptible to misuse. So basically, the Uttar Pradesh government is amending this anti-conversion law of 2021. There are certain stringent provisions. We will discuss those stringent provisions, then we will move on. As stringent as possible, owing to the least organized and well-planned. Now, we have to understand the statement of reason why this particular amendment was brought. The existing legislation needed to be made as stringent as possible. This is the statement of reason of this particular bill. Why these amendments were brought? The existing legislation need to be made as stringent as possible owing to the least organized and well-planned involvement of foreign and anti-national elements and organization in demographic change due to unlawful conversion. Now the main reason given by this particular act, why this particular amendment was brought, because there is the involvement of foreign institution, and these activities of conversion are executed in a well-planned manner. That's why the government has made this particular act more stringent. Between January 2021 and April 30th, 2023, only 427 cases were registered under the act. Now, what have been done after the amendment, that the bail provisions have been made more stringent. The term of punishment have been increased, the amount of fine have been increased. So these are the things that have been done after bringing this particular amendment. Earlier, a person convicted of unlawful conversion faced a maximum prison term of 1 year and a maximum of 5 years, along with the fine of 15,000. Under the amended bill, the minimum term has been raised to 5 years and a maximum of 10 years. The fine have been also increased to 50,000. Originally, the punishment for conversion was minimum 1 year and a maximum of 5 years, and a fine was of rupees 15,000 under 2021 law. But under 2024 amendment, the minimum punishment have been raised to 5 years, the maximum punishment have been raised to 10 years, and the fine have been also increased threefold, from 15,000 to 50,000 for unlawful conversions involving a minor, a woman, or a person belonging to a scheduled caste or scheduled tribes. The penalty has been increased from a prison term of 2 to 10 years to 5 to 14 years. Now, if a person is convicted for conversion of unlawful conversion of any minor or a woman, from women or scheduled to a woman belonging to a, or a person belonging to a scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. Now, originally, under 2021 Act, the minimum punishment was 2 years and the maximum punishment was 10 years. And now, under 2024 law, the minimum punishment is now 5 years and the maximum punishment is now 14 years. Now, the fine has been increased fourfold, now from 25,000 to 1 lakh. The amendment also introduces two new categories of offences. Two new offences have been introduced by the virtue of this 2024 amendment. Now, what are these new categories of offences? First, the newly added subsection 2, section 5 mandates a prison term of 7 years extended to 14 years for anyone who secures foreign funds from illegal institutions for the purpose of unlawful conversion. If any accused have taken this foreign funding for these unlawful conversions in India, then minimum prison term of 7 years and a maximum of 14 years. This particular offense have been added in the under section 5 of this particular act. If the accused causes any person to fear of his life or property, assaults or uses force, promises or instigate marriage conspiracies or induce any minor woman or person to traffic or otherwise sells them, they shall be punished with a minimum 20 years imprisonment, which can be extended to life imprisonment. Now, if anyone is accused of assault or use of force, or conspiracy for the trafficking of a person, then that particular person will be given a minimum jail term of 20 years, which can be extended to life imprisonment. Under section 4 of the original act, only any aggrieved person or his or her parents, brother, sister, or any other person who is related to him or her by blood, marriage, or adoption was authorized to file a criminal complaint for unlawful conversion. Now, under section 4 of this 2021 act, only aggrieved person or the person related to that aggrieved person can file the complaint of unlawful conversion. But after this 2024 amendment, there are other authorities also which can file this FIR on the behalf of that particular person, because these 427 FIRs have been filed between January 1, 2021 to April 30, 2023, and most of these FIR have been filed by unauthorized third parties. Now, most of these FIRs are coming from the unauthorized third parties. So government has made this law, and government has allowed unauthorized parties to file the complaints if they are witnessing anything there in their surrounding. Now, two things have been changed with regard to bail. Now, two things have been changed with regard to bail. Now, what are these two things? That, under section 7, uh, an accused cannot be granted bail if the prosecution has not been provided the opportunity to contest the bail application, to oppose the bail application. Under section 7, अगर accused ने bail के लिए apply किया है तो उसको bail तब तक नहीं मिलेगी जब तक prosecutor को एक बार उसकी bail को oppose करने का मौका नहीं मिलेगा. This is the first condition. Now coming on to the second condition, द सेशन कोर्ट में ग्रांट बेल. अब देखिए, आपने बेल के लिए अप्लाई किया, ऑपोजिट जो आपका प्रोसिक्यूटर था उसने आपकी बेल को अपोज भी कर दिया, और उसके बाद अब जज ने डिसाइड किया कि आपको बेल देना है. तो जज के लिए क्या गाइडलाइन है? देर आर रीजनेबल ग्राउंड फॉर बिलीविंग दैट अक्यूज इज नॉट गिल्टी ऑफ सच ऑफेंस. अब जज को अगर ये लगता है कि अक्यूज उस ऑफेंस का गिल्टी ऑफेंस को कमिट नहीं किया उसने, तभी वो क्या कर सकता है, उसको रिलीज कर सकता है, और उसको रीजंस भी देने होंगे. द रिवर्स बर्डन ऑफ प्रूफ ऑन द अक्यूज्ड rendered it virtually impossible for anyone to obtain bail until the completion of the trial. What the and the best and the worst thing is that the burden of proof is on the accused. The burden of proof is on the accused that he was not involved in conversion. So it becomes inevitable for the accused as well that we won't be getting any kind of bail until the completion of trial. Why? Because he has already the burden of proving his innocence. So this is the logic. Not only Uttar Pradesh, various other states in India have also similar laws like Odisha, Madhya Pradesh, Arunachal Pradesh, and few states recently have made laws like Chhattisgarh, Gujarat, Himachal Pradesh, Jharkhand, and Uttarakhand. So this was the another important news related to Uttar Pradesh. Now moving on to the next important news headline. So there are various political parties who are basically protesting against the judgment given in the case of state of Punjab and others versus Davinder Singh and others. Basically, the subcategorization of scheduled castes and scheduled tribes in India. Various political parties are, kind of protesting against this particular judgment, and they will definitely file for a review petition. We have moved into the business sector now. There is nothing important in the business sector of 7th of August 2024. Now we are moving into the international section. Now Hamas is after the death of Ismail Hania. He was, assassinated by Israeli Defense Forces. Now Hamas has named Gaza Strip chief Yahya Sinwar. So Yahya Sinwar is going to be the new Hamas chief. Yahya Sinwar. Now this is kind of emotional news because these wrestlers were protesting against the Indian government. These wrestlers were protesting against the Wrestling Federation of India, and they were tortured by the Indian government and the Wrestling Federation of India in every possible way. Now this wrestler Vinesh Fogart, she's going into the finals of the 50 kg freestyle wrestling competition. Now this is one news that we have to understand the importance, that she has not assured India one medal. The color of medal may be silver or gold, but again we have to understand the kind of struggle she was facing before going into the tournament, and she have basically proved herself. She has proved herself. And now another important news, another good news that is coming all the way from Paris, that our golden boy Neeraj Chopra has qualified with this फर्स्ट थ्रो, और ये इनका इस सीजन का सबसे अच्छा थ्रो था 89 मीटर का. तीसरा इंपॉर्टेंट न्यूज़ हॉकी टर्फ से आ रहा है, और ये न्यूज़ थोड़ा सा अच्छी नहीं है क्योंकि जर्मनी ने हमें हरा दिया 3-2 से और सेमीफाइनल्स में. तो अब इंडिया बाहर हो चुका है ओलंपिक से, बट वी स्टिल हैव अ ब्रॉन्ज मेडल मैच. हम अभी ब्रॉन्ज मेडल मैच खेलेंगे, और इंडियन हॉकी प्लेयर्स प्लेड सुपर्ब. दे हैव शोन लाइक दिस द बेस्ट परफॉर्मेंस. तो ऐसा हार्ट ब्रेक होना तो बनता ही है. कितना अच्छा ओलंपिक जा रहा था इंडियन हॉकी टीम का. हमने इंग्लैंड को हराया, हमने ग्रेट ब्रिटेन को हराया, हमने ऑस्ट्रेलिया को हराया 52 ईयर्स के बाद, बट जर्मनी ने हमारा जो ये सफ़र था वो रोक दिया है. ठीक है, तो आज के न्यूज़पेपर में जितने भी इंपॉर्टेंट न्यूज़ आइटम्स हैं हम लोगों ने यहाँ तक कवर कर लिए हैं। अगर आप लोगों का कोई भी सवाल रहता है देन डू पंच इन द कमेंट सेक्शन एंड प्लीज़ डू लाइक द वीडियो, डू लाइक द वीडियो एंड सब्सक्राइब टू आवर यूट्यूब चैनल, बिकॉज जब तक आप लोग लाइक नहीं करें फिर समझ में कैसे आएगा कि हाँ कुछ कैसा uh, आप लोगों को समझ में आ रहा है या नहीं। वो सॉर्ट ऑफ योर लाइक्स आर अ सॉर्ट ऑफ फीडबैक फॉर अस टू इम्प्रूव। तो आप लोग प्लीज़ लाइक करिएगा वीडियो को। अगर कुछ भी आपका डाउट रहता है तो कमेंट सेक्शन में प्लीज़ उसे मेंशन करिएगा। थैंक यू सो मच फॉर वॉचिंग टुडेज वीडियो एनालिसिस। थैंक यू।